In the heart of Colombia, nestled within the verdant Antioquia department, a sprawling estate once stood as a monument to immense power and unfathomable wealth. This region, known for its rolling hills and fertile valleys, had long been a crossroads of commerce and culture, but in the late 20th century it became the unlikely stage for a story that would ripple across continents and decades. This was Hacienda Nápoles, the luxurious private sanctuary of the notorious drug lord, Pablo Escobar. Built during the height of Colombia's drug-fueled turmoil, the estate was more than just a home. It was a symbol of Escobar's dominance over both the land and the law. During the 1980s, as Colombia grappled with violence and upheaval, Escobar transformed this land into a personal kingdom, complete with an airstrip, a collection of vintage cars, and, most bizarrely, a private zoo. The estate became a microcosm of excess, a place where the boundaries of legality and morality were routinely ignored. This menagerie was a symbol of his ability to acquire anything he desired, no matter how exotic or how difficult to obtain. The estate's security and isolation allowed Escobar to operate with impunity, importing rare and dangerous animals from around the world. He illegally imported creatures from across the globe, filling his estate with kangaroos, giraffes, elephants, and rhinoceroses, creating a surreal spectacle of wildlife far from their native homes. These animals, symbols of distant continents, were now part of a Colombian landscape that had never known their kind. Among the many animals brought to this opulent prison, one acquisition would have consequences far beyond what anyone could have imagined at the time. The arrival of the African hippopotamus would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge Colombia's environment and its people for generations. Escobar, captivated by the sheer size and presence of the African hippopotamus, arranged for the importation of a small group. The hippo, a creature revered and feared in its native Africa, was an oddity in South America, a living trophy for a man obsessed with the extraordinary. He brought in just 4 individuals, 1 male and 3 others, from a zoo in the United States. The logistics of transporting such massive animals across continents were daunting, but Escobar's resources and disregard for international law made the impossible routine. These colossal semi-aquatic mammals, native to the rivers and lakes of sub-Saharan Africa, were transported thousands of miles to become living ornaments in his private collection. Their journey was a testament to the reach of Escobar's empire and the porousness of international borders in the face of corruption. They were confined to a purpose-built lake on the estate, where they wallowed in the warm Colombian sun, oblivious to the turbulent world of their owner and the strange new continent they now inhabited. The artificial lake, fed by local rivers and surrounded by abundant vegetation, provided an environment strikingly similar to their African homeland. The hippos of Hacienda Nápoles were, for a time, simply another curiosity in a landscape of excess. Their presence was a spectacle for visitors and a point of pride for Escobar, who saw himself as a collector of the world's wonders. They were a testament to a man who saw the world as his to plunder, a man for whom international laws and biological boundaries were mere trifles to be ignored. Escobar's vision of power extended beyond money and influence. It was about bending nature itself to his will. Visitors to the estate would marvel at these magnificent beasts, creatures of immense power and surprising grace in the water, yet they remained contained, a part of a carefully curated, if illicit, display. The hippos became a local legend, their size and temperament inspiring awe and curiosity. No one could have predicted that this small captive group was the seed of a future biological invasion, one that would outlive Escobar himself, and present a unique and perplexing challenge for the nation he once terrorized. The hippos, once a symbol of excess, would become a symbol of unintended consequence. These initial 4 hippos represented the genesis of an unprecedented ecological experiment, albeit an unintentional one. Their adaptation to the Colombian environment would soon reveal the resilience and unpredictability of nature when set free from its usual constraints. In their native Africa, hippo populations are kept in check by a delicate balance of factors, including seasonal droughts that limit food and water, and the constant threat of natural predators like lions and crocodiles. These pressures ensure that hippo numbers remain stable and ecosystems remain balanced. But in the artificial paradise of Hacienda Nápoles, these natural pressures were entirely absent. The Colombian landscape, with its abundant rainfall and lack of large predators, offered the hippos a sanctuary free from the hardships of their native land. The animals had access to an endless supply of water and lush vegetation, creating an environment where they could not just survive but truly flourish. The estate's isolation and the region's climate combined to create a perfect haven for the hippo's expansion. This idyllic setting, designed as a rich man's plaything, was inadvertently the perfect incubator for what would become the largest wild hippopotamus population outside of Africa. The story of Escobar's hippos is a tale of unintended consequences, where history, environment, and human ambition collided to create a new chapter in Colombia's natural history. The reign of Pablo Escobar, once the most feared and powerful drug lord in the world, came to a violent and dramatic end in December 1993. His death on a Medellin rooftop was not just the conclusion of a manhunt, but the collapse of an empire that had shaped the fate of a nation. In the aftermath, the vast and intricate network Escobar had built, spanning continents, corrupting officials, and fueling violence, began to unravel. The Colombian government, under immense international pressure, moved swiftly to seize his assets and dismantle the infrastructure of the Medellin cartel. Among the most challenging of these assets was the infamous Hacienda Nápoles, a sprawling estate that stood as a monument to Escobar's excesses. The property was not only a symbol of untouchable power, but also home to an eclectic collection of exotic animals imported from across the globe. As the estate fell into disrepair, government officials faced the monumental task of dismantling the private zoo. The once meticulously maintained grounds became overgrown, and the enclosures that had housed rare and dangerous animals began to crumble. A comprehensive plan was devised to relocate the animals to more suitable homes in zoos and sanctuaries, both within Colombia and abroad. This operation required immense logistical coordination, international cooperation, and the expertise of veterinarians and animal handlers. Most of the animals, including lions, elephants, and rare birds, were successfully captured and transported to new environments where they could be properly cared for. Giraffes, zebras, and kangaroos found new homes in professional facilities, their futures secured by the dedication of conservationists and zookeepers. However, the hippos presented a unique and formidable challenge. These massive creatures native to Africa had thrived in the warm, wet climate of central Colombia, adapting quickly to their new environment. Attempts to capture and relocate the hippos proved nearly impossible. Their size, strength, and aggressive nature made them resistant to traditional methods of containment and transport. Weighing several tons each and fiercely territorial, the hippos were perfectly at home in the estate's expansive lakes and rivers, making any effort to move them a logistical nightmare. The cost and complexity of capturing, sedating, and transporting such large and dangerous animals were deemed prohibitively high by government agencies already stretched thin by the ongoing fight against organized crime and the need to rebuild national institutions. Ultimately, a fateful decision was made. The hippos would be left behind, free to roam the estate and its surrounding wetlands. Officials assumed that, isolated in a foreign land and with only a handful of individuals, the hippo population would not survive for long. The prevailing belief was that the animals would either perish or fail to reproduce in significant numbers. After all, they were thousands of miles from their native Africa, a biological anomaly in the Colombian landscape, and it was thought that nature would simply take its course. The authorities reasoned that with time the problem would resolve itself and the hippos would become little more than a curious footnote in the chaotic aftermath of Escobar's downfall. The gates of Hacienda Nápoles were left open and the hippos, once confined to a gilded cage, were now free to explore the surrounding countryside. Abandoned and considered too difficult and expensive to manage, the hippos became a living legacy of Escobar's reign, overlooked as the nation focused on rebuilding. This decision, born of necessity and a measure of wishful thinking, would have far-reaching consequences for Colombia's ecology, politics, and society. Over the years, the hippos adapted and multiplied, becoming an unexpected invasive species. Their presence began to reshape local ecosystems, competing with native wildlife and altering the balance of the wetlands. As the government turned its attention to pressing matters, rebuilding institutions, restoring order, and addressing the scars left by decades of conflict, the hippos of Hacienda Nápoles quietly expanded their territory. The confines of their man-made lake were no longer a boundary. The hippos began to venture into the vast network of rivers and wetlands that define the Magdalena River basin. The interconnected waterways provided an open invitation to a new and unexplored world, allowing the hippos to spread far beyond the estate's crumbling fences. The problem had not been solved, it had simply been set loose. The fall of Escobar's criminal empire had inadvertently given rise to a new and unexpected force, one that would challenge Colombia's environment, politics, and society for generations to come. Contrary to the authorities' expectations, the hippos did not perish. Instead, they found themselves in a land that seemed almost tailor-made for their needs, a true paradise. The Magdalena River basin, Colombia's principal waterway, offered an environment that was in many ways even more favorable than their native African habitat. Here the hippos encountered a world of endless water, lush vegetation, and a climate that rarely shifted from warm and humid. The region is characterized by a year-round rainy season, ensuring a constant and abundant supply of water in the rivers, lakes, and marshes. This perpetual wetness meant that the hippos never had to endure the harsh droughts that often threaten their survival in Africa. The climate is consistently warm and humid, perfectly suited to these semi-aquatic mammals who spend the majority of their days submerged to protect their sensitive skin from the sun. The rivers and lakes provided a cool refuge, while the thick vegetation along the banks offered shade and shelter. In this new world, the hippos quickly adapted their daily routines. At dawn, they would rise from the muddy riverbeds, their massive forms gliding silently through the water. Groups would gather in the shallows, socializing and marking their territory with impressive displays of yawning and splashing. As the sun climbed higher, the hippos would retreat to deeper waters, submerging themselves almost entirely, with only their eyes, ears, and nostrils visible above the surface. This behavior, so crucial in Africa, became second nature in Colombia, where the midday heat could be intense. When dusk approached, the hippos would emerge from the water, their enormous bodies glistening in the fading light. They would lumber onto the floodplains, where the grass grew thick and green, and begin their nightly feast. Hippos are voracious grazers, consuming up to 40 kilograms of grass each night, and the Colombian landscape provided an endless buffet. The fertile floodplains of the Magdalena River offered boundless pastures of lush vegetation, providing more than enough sustenance for the growing population. The hippos' powerful jaws and broad mouths made short work of the abundant grasses, and their presence began to shape the landscape itself, creating new paths and grazing areas. Furthermore, and perhaps most critically, the hippos found themselves in an ecosystem with no natural predators. In Africa, young, old, or sick hippos might fall prey to prides of lions, packs of hyenas or large crocodiles. In Colombia, no native animal was large enough or powerful enough to pose a threat to a multi-ton hippopotamus. This lack of predation allowed the hippos to thrive without fear, and their social groups grew larger and more stable. The original four had become the founders of a new wild dynasty, their numbers slowly but surely increasing with each passing year. Freed from the constraints of their original enclosure at Hacienda Nápoles, the hippos began to expand their territory. Following the network of waterways, they moved out into the Magdalena River itself, establishing new territories and colonizing new lakes and tributaries. As they explored, the hippos encountered a variety of local wildlife. Capybaras, caimans, and turtles shared the riverbanks, often giving way to the much larger newcomers. Birds, such as herons and kingfishers, perched nearby, sometimes following the hippos to catch fish and insects stirred up by their movements. While the hippos generally ignored these smaller animals, their sheer size and appetite began to influence the local ecosystem. Fish populations shifted as the hippos' waste enriched the water, and the altered vegetation patterns changed the feeding grounds for other herbivores. Researchers observed that the Colombian hippos were even reaching sexual maturity at a younger age than their African counterparts, likely due to the constant availability of high-quality food. This accelerated their rate of reproduction, turning a slow population growth into a rapidly escalating one. The hippos' daily life became a cycle of feeding, socializing, and exploring. Young calves learned to navigate the rivers under the watchful eyes of the adults, while dominant males patrolled their stretches of water, occasionally clashing in dramatic displays of power. The Colombian environment provided everything they needed to thrive, with none of the dangers they would have faced in Africa. Their survival was not just a fluke, it was a testament to their incredible adaptability and the accidental perfection of their new home. This success story for the hippos, however, was also the beginning of a profound ecological imbalance. Their presence began to alter the landscape in subtle but significant ways, from the composition of plant life to the behavior of native animals. The hippo paradise was a reality, but it was a paradise built on an unnatural foundation, and its consequences were only just beginning to be understood by the human communities and native ecosystems that now had to share their world with these colossal newcomers. The story of Colombia's hippos is, at its core, a tale of unchecked population growth on a scale rarely seen in the animal kingdom. The initial group of 4 hippos, originally brought to the country in the late 1980s, was left to roam freely after the collapse of Escobar's estate in the early 1990s. With no natural predators and an environment that closely mimicked their native African habitat, these hippos found themselves in a paradise of abundance. The Magdalena River basin, with its warm climate, plentiful water, and endless vegetation, provided the perfect conditions for the hippos to thrive and reproduce. In this idyllic setting, the hippos began to multiply at an astonishing rate, far outpacing the reproductive rates observed in their native range. Free from the threat of lions, crocodiles, or drought, and with an unlimited food supply, the hippos' population entered a phase of exponential growth. What began as a handful of animals confined to a single estate soon became a sprawling, multi-generational herd spreading far beyond their original boundaries. By the 2010s, scientific surveys and aerial counts estimated the population at around 80 individuals. Today, in 2025, the population is believed to have swelled to well over 160, with some estimates suggesting the true number could be even higher due to the difficulty of tracking these massive animals in dense wetlands. This makes Colombia home to the largest population of wild hippos outside Africa and the largest invasive mammal population on the planet. The scale of this biological phenomenon is unprecedented. according to a 2021 study published in the journal Biological Conservation. The hippo population in Colombia has been growing at an annual rate of nearly 10%, a figure that far exceeds the growth rates seen in their native habitats. Researchers attribute this rapid increase to the absence of predation, the abundance of food, and the lack of seasonal stressors such as drought. Dr. David Echeverri, a leading Colombian biologist, notes that the hippo's reproductive success in Colombia is a direct result of these favorable conditions. In Africa, hippos face significant mortality from predators and environmental pressures. Here they are free to breed and expand without restraint, he explains. Scientific models have attempted to predict the future of this unchecked proliferation. One influential study, led by Dr. Echeverri and his team, used population viability analysis to project future numbers. The results were alarming. If the current growth rate remains unchecked, the hippo population could surge to over 1,400 individuals by the year 2040. Such a dramatic increase would have catastrophic ecological and social consequences. The hippos are not only increasing in number but also expanding their range at an astonishing pace. Satellite tracking and field observations have documented hippos traveling hundreds of kilometers up and down the Magdalena River, entering tributaries and new water channels. This expansion has made them an established, if unwelcome, part of Colombia's national fauna. The ecological consequences are profound. Hippos are ecosystem engineers, capable of altering their environment in significant ways. Their grazing and movement patterns can damage riverbanks, uproot vegetation, and disrupt habitats for native species. Studies have shown that hippo waste can increase nutrient loads in rivers, leading to algal blooms and oxygen depletion, which threaten fish and other aquatic life. Local fishermen have reported declining fish stocks and changes in water quality, attributing these shifts to the growing hippo population. The hippo's presence also poses a direct threat to native wildlife, including manatees, turtles, and capybaras, which compete for the same resources. As the population grows, so does the risk of conflict with humans. Hippos are known to be highly territorial and aggressive, and there have been increasing reports of encounters with local farmers and fishermen. The Colombian government, once dismissive of the hippos as a minor curiosity, now faces a full-blown biological crisis. Attempts at management, including sterilization and relocation, have proven costly and logistically challenging. The hippo's reproductive efficiency is a key factor in their success. In Colombia, hippos have been observed breeding at a younger age and more frequently than their African counterparts. A single male can father dozens of calves, and the lack of environmental stresses means that survival rates for young hippos are exceptionally high. This shortens the time it takes for the population to double, creating a feedback loop of rapid expansion. Each new hippo born in Colombia adds to the mounting pressure on the ecosystem, increasing the risk of habitat degradation and resource competition. The sheer number of these animals has transformed them from a local curiosity into a national problem, drawing the attention of scientists, conservationists, and policymakers worldwide. The cocaine hippos, as they are sometimes called, have become a living, breathing, and rapidly breeding legacy of Escobar's era. Their story is a stark illustration of how quickly an invasive species can take hold when introduced into a suitable new environment without natural checks and balances. As the population continues to climb, the question is no longer whether the hippos will survive, but how Colombia can manage their seemingly unstoppable expansion before it is too late. The world watches as Colombia grapples with the consequences of this extraordinary population explosion, one that has forever changed the country's rivers, landscapes, and ecological future. The challenge now is to find a solution that balances ecological integrity, public safety, and the realities of managing one of the world's most unusual wildlife invasions. The legacy of Escobar's hippos is a cautionary tale for the world, a vivid reminder of the unpredictable consequences that can arise when humans introduce powerful species into new environments. The future of Colombia's rivers and the fate of its native wildlife now hang in the balance. The world's largest invasive mammal population continues to grow, and the race to contain it has only just begun. The Colombian government, conservationists, and scientists are now united in their efforts to address this unprecedented challenge. The question remains, can the tide be turned before the hippo's population explosion becomes truly irreversible? The answer will shape the future of Colombia's ecosystems for generations to come. Section 5. The Ecological Conundrum, an Alien Impact. When hippos were first introduced to Colombia, no one could have predicted the far-reaching consequences their presence would have on the region's delicate ecosystems. What began as an exotic curiosity has now become a complex environmental crisis, with the hippos acting as a textbook example of how invasive species can disrupt the intricate web of life. The ever-expanding population of hippos is exerting a profound and detrimental influence on Colombia's aquatic environments. These massive animals, weighing up to several tons each, are what ecologists call ecosystem engineers. Their daily activities, wading, wallowing, and feeding, physically reshape the landscape, altering riverbanks, stirring up sediment, and changing the flow of water. One of the most significant impacts comes from their waste. Each hippo can excrete tens of kilograms of dung into the water every single day. This waste, rich in nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, is released directly into rivers and lakes, where it accumulates rapidly. In their native African habitats, this nutrient input is part of a balanced ancient cycle. The rivers there are vast and dynamic, with a diversity of species adapted to the presence of hippos. But in Colombia, the waterways are often smaller, slower, and less able to absorb such a massive influx of organic material. The result is a process called eutrophication, where excess nutrients fuel explosive blooms of algae and bacteria. These blooms dramatically alter the water's chemistry, turning once clear rivers and lakes into murky, green-tinged bodies of water. As these algal blooms grow, they block sunlight from reaching aquatic plants below the surface, disrupting the base of the food web. When the algae eventually die, their decomposition consumes vast amounts of dissolved oxygen, creating hypoxic, or dead, zones where few organisms can survive. Fish and other aquatic life suffocate, and the river becomes a graveyard. These low oxygen conditions are lethal for fish and invertebrates, many of which are vital to local food chains and the livelihoods of riverside communities. The collapse of fish populations threatens not only biodiversity but also the economic stability of those who depend on fishing for sustenance and income. The water itself, once a source of life, is now tainted by the biological functions of these invasive giants. But the impact of hippos goes beyond water chemistry. Their sheer size and aggressive behavior allow them to outcompete and displace native species, both in the water and along the banks. Native animals such as the West Indian manatee, a gentle endangered herbivore, find themselves in direct competition with hippos for food and space. The manatee, already struggling to survive, is no match for the far more aggressive and robust hippos, which dominate prime feeding areas and safe havens. Forced out of their habitats, manatees are pushed into less suitable areas, further jeopardizing their survival. The presence of hippos is accelerating the decline of this already threatened native species, highlighting the devastating consequences of introducing a foreign animal into a fragile ecosystem. The impact doesn't end at the water's edge. Hippos emerge from rivers at night to graze, their immense weight compacting the soil and their voracious appetite stripping large areas of vegetation. This nightly foraging leaves the land bare and vulnerable, The loss of plant cover and the compaction of soil led to increased erosion along riverbanks. As the soil washes away, habitats are further degraded and sediment clouds the water, compounding the problems already caused by nutrient pollution. The hippos of Colombia are not passive residents. They are active agents of change, reshaping the landscape and disrupting the balance that has existed for millennia. Their story is a powerful, living example of the unpredictable and often devastating consequences that arise when a species is introduced into an ecosystem that did not evolve alongside it. The result is a cascade of environmental changes, chemical, physical, and biological, that threaten the very fabric of Colombia's natural heritage. The expanding hippo population has inevitably led to increased encounters and conflicts with the people living along the Magdalena River. For many local communities, particularly small-scale farmers and fisherfolk, the hippos have become a source of fear and genuine danger. In Africa, hippos are widely recognized as one of the most dangerous large animals, responsible for more human fatalities each year than lions or crocodiles. Their seemingly placid demeanor is deceptive. They are fiercely territorial, unpredictable, and can become extremely aggressive if they feel threatened, particularly when protecting their young. This inherent danger has now been imported into the Colombian countryside. There have been numerous documented reports of hippo attacks on humans in Colombia. Fishermen in small boats have been charged and capsized by territorial males, forcing them to scramble for their lives. Farmers have had their crops trampled and consumed by hippos during their nocturnal grazing forays, representing a significant economic loss. People have been chased and have had to run for safety when accidentally stumbling upon a hippo on land after dark. In 2020, the first officially recorded serious attack occurred when a man was severely injured by a hippo that had wandered far from the river. These incidents are becoming more common as the hippo population grows and their territory overlaps more with human settlements. The relationship between the local people and the hippos is, however, complex and deeply divided. While many view the animals with fear and frustration, others have found a way to profit from their presence. In the area around Hacienda Nápoles, which has been converted into a theme park, the hippos have become a major tourist attraction. A local economy has sprung up around them, with residents selling hippo-themed souvenirs, from T-shirts and keychains to painted statues. For these individuals, the hippos are not a pest, but a source of livelihood, drawing in visitors who are eager to catch a glimpse of these exotic creatures in the wild. This economic dependence creates a powerful incentive for some to protect the hippos, adding a complicated socio-economic layer to the biological problem. The animals are simultaneously a menace and a mascot. They represent both a physical threat to personal safety and a unique opportunity for economic gain. This duality of perception within the local communities makes finding a universally accepted solution incredibly difficult. Any management plan must contend not only with the ecological and safety issues, but also with the fact that, for a significant number of people, the cocaine hippos have become an integral and valued part of their local identity and economy. To mitigate the risks, local communities have had to adapt in various ways. Farmers have started setting up barriers around their crops to prevent hippos from trampling and eating them. Fishermen have taken to patrolling the riverbanks at dawn and dusk, using makeshift deterrents to keep the hippos at bay. Community meetings have become a regular occurrence, where locals share their experiences and strategies for dealing with hippo encounters. On the cultural front, the hippos have also influenced local art and crafts. Artisans have begun creating hippo-themed souvenirs, which have become popular among tourists. Traditional festivals now feature hippo-themed events and dances, reflecting the animal's growing significance in local culture. Some locals have taken on the role of educators, offering guided tours and sharing knowledge about the hippos with curious visitors. Despite the challenges, the community's resilience and adaptability are evident. They continue to find ways to coexist with these giant neighbors, balancing safety with economic opportunity. The future of this coexistence remains uncertain, but the local communities are determined to find a way to live with the hippos, turning a potential disaster into a unique aspect of their daily lives. As the hippo population continued to grow and spread beyond the confines of Hacienda Nápoles, it became clear that some form of intervention was necessary. The animals, once a bizarre legacy of Escobar's empire, were now a pressing national concern. By 2009, the problem had become impossible to ignore. Hippos were no longer a curiosity. They were a threat to local livelihoods and safety. A small group of hippos, including a large male nicknamed Pepe, had wandered far from the original herd, establishing a new territory and reportedly terrorizing local farmers and fishermen. Crops were trampled, fishing nets destroyed, and the risk of dangerous encounters increased. The escalating threat prompted the government to convene a series of urgent meetings. Policymakers, environmental authorities, and military strategists debated the best course of action. After much deliberation, the government authorized a drastic and controversial measure, a cull. The army was tasked with tracking down and eliminating the wandering animals to ensure public safety. The decision was not made lightly. It was the result of intense internal debate about the ethics and necessity of lethal intervention. The soldiers, trained for precision and discipline, moved through the dense landscape following the hippos' tracks. After days of searching, they located the group and, following their orders, shot and killed Pepe. The mission was deemed a success from a public safety standpoint. Local farmers and fishermen expressed relief, believing their communities were safer. However, the aftermath ignited a firestorm of public debate. A photograph soon emerged and was widely circulated in the media, showing a group of soldiers posing with the massive carcass of the slain hippo in a manner reminiscent of big-game trophy hunters. The image became a lightning rod for controversy. This single image provoked a massive public outcry. Across the country, people debated the ethics of the cull, questioning whether such lethal measures were justified. Animal rights organizations, both within Colombia and internationally, condemned the killing as a cruel and unnecessary act of violence against an animal that, in their view, was an innocent victim of human actions. They argued that the hippos were not to blame for their presence in Colombia and that more humane solutions should have been pursued. The public backlash was swift and powerful. Demonstrations erupted in major cities, and heated debates filled radio shows and editorial pages. The image of the dead hippo transformed the narrative from one of public safety and invasive species control to one of animal cruelty. The cull, intended as a practical solution, was now seen by many as a moral failure. The hippos, once symbols of a drug lord's excess, were now cast as charismatic megafauna deserving of protection. Conservationists argued that the animals had become part of Colombia's natural heritage. The emotional response was so strong that it led to legal challenges. Lawyers and activists filed lawsuits demanding that the hippos be granted legal protection and that future culls be prohibited. In court, the debate raged between government representatives who argued for the necessity of population control and animal rights advocates who insisted on the animal's right to life and humane treatment. In a landmark ruling, a Colombian court declared that it was illegal to hunt or kill the hippos, effectively granting them protected status. The decision was hailed as a victory by animal rights groups and set a legal precedent for the treatment of invasive species. This legal decision completely altered the course of hippo management in Colombia. Government officials who had once advocated for culling as the most effective solution now found themselves constrained by the law. The most direct and, according to some biologists, most effective method of population control, culling, was now off the table. Scientists warned that without intervention, the hippo population would continue to grow unchecked. The government's hands were tied by the court's decision and the immense public sentiment in favor of protecting the animals. Policymakers were forced to seek alternative, non-lethal solutions such as sterilization and relocation. While the ruling was celebrated as a victory for animal rights, it left environmental authorities in an impossible position. They were now responsible for managing an invasive species that continued to threaten local ecosystems and communities. The authorities were legally obligated to protect an invasive species that was causing significant ecological harm and posing a growing threat to public safety. The ethical debate raged on. Should the rights of individual animals outweigh the health of entire ecosystems? The Pepe incident demonstrated the deep emotional connection people can form with large, charismatic animals, even when they are a demonstrable problem. The controversy over the cull forced Colombia to confront difficult questions about wildlife management, ethics, and the unintended consequences of human actions. With culling legally prohibited, Colombian environmental agencies were forced to explore non-lethal methods of controlling the hippo population. This challenge required a combination of scientific innovation, field expertise, and logistical coordination as the hippo's numbers continued to rise. The most obvious alternative was sterilization, a method that would prevent the animals from reproducing without having to kill them. This approach, while humane, presented a host of technical and practical challenges. The first attempts at this began around 2013, focusing on surgical sterilization. The procedure itself is highly complex, requiring a team of experienced veterinarians and specialized equipment. This process, however, proved to be extraordinarily difficult, dangerous, and expensive. Hippos are among the largest and most aggressive land mammals, making any close interaction risky for the team. The first step required tracking and tranquilizing a multi-ton aggressive animal in a complex and often inaccessible environment. The tranquilizer dosage had to be calculated precisely based on the animal's estimated weight, as underdosing could leave the hippo mobile and dangerous, while overdosing could be fatal. Once sedated, the hippo had to be moved to a location where a team of veterinarians could perform the complex surgical procedure. This often involved using ropes, tarps, and makeshift stretchers, all while monitoring the animal's vital signs. The logistical challenges were immense. Transporting heavy surgical equipment into remote wetlands required boats, trucks, and sometimes even helicopters. Every operation was a major undertaking, often involving days of preparation. The sheer size of the animals made them difficult to handle, and the risks associated with anesthesia are high in such large mammals. Hippos have unique physiology, including thick skin and a tendency to react unpredictably to sedatives, which further complicated the process. The cost of a single surgical sterilization ran into the tens of thousands of dollars, a prohibitive expense for the environmental agency's limited budgets. Each operation required a large team, expensive drugs, and specialized equipment. As a result of these difficulties, the program had a negligible impact on the overall population growth. The number of sterilizations completed each year was far too low to make a meaningful difference. On average, only about one hippo was successfully sterilized per year. This was a fraction of what would be needed to control the population. At this rate, the population would continue to explode, making the surgical approach little more than a symbolic gesture, rather than a viable management strategy. Faced with the failure of surgical sterilization, scientists and authorities began searching for a more practical solution. Experts in wildlife management, veterinary medicine, and ecology convened to discuss alternatives. This led them to a new and promising technology, chemical contraception administered remotely. The idea was to use tranquilizer darts to deliver a contraceptive agent, eliminating the need for risky and expensive surgeries. In 2021, the regional environmental agency, CORNERA, initiated a program using a contraceptive drug called gonacon. The agency's male-led field teams were trained in the use of dart guns and the handling of the drug. This drug works by stimulating the production of antibodies that block sex hormones, effectively making the animal infertile. The technical process involves drawing the correct dose into a dart, which is then fired at the hippo from a safe distance. The greatest advantage of this method is that it can be delivered via darts fired from a distance, eliminating the need to capture and anesthetize the hippos. This reduces the risk to both the animals and the field teams. This makes the process safer, faster, and significantly cheaper. The teams can treat multiple animals in a single day, greatly increasing the program's reach. The gonacon program represented a new ray of hope. For the first time, there was a scalable, non-lethal method that could realistically slow the hippo's reproductive rate. The drug had been used successfully to control populations of other wild animals, such as wild horses in the United States and kangaroos in Australia. International experts provided technical advice to the Colombian teams. In the initial phases of the Colombian program, dozens of hippos were successfully darted with the contraceptive. Each animal was tracked and monitored to assess the effectiveness of the treatment, while the long-term effectiveness on the hippo population is still being monitored. This approach offers the first scalable and potentially effective non-lethal method for slowing the reproductive rate of the herd. Ongoing research and field observations are critical to refining the technique. It is a race against time, an attempt to use modern science to manage the consequences of a problem created decades ago, striking a balance between public sentiment and ecological necessity. The work of these dedicated teams, veterinarians, biologists, and field experts, continues as they strive to find the most effective and humane solution to Colombia's wild hippo problem. In 2025, Colombia stands at a pivotal moment, grappling with the future of its most notorious invasive species, the hippos once owned by Pablo Escobar. The country is deeply split, and the debate has grown into a national conversation that touches every corner of Colombian society. Across the nation, town halls are filled with passionate voices. Recent interviews with local leaders, biologists, and community members reveal a spectrum of opinions. In a survey conducted by the National University of Colombia, nearly half of respondents described the hippos as a national symbol, while the other half labeled them a dangerous threat. The country is fundamentally divided. Some see the hippos as a unique part of Colombia's identity, while others view them as an ecological disaster in the making. This division runs deep, not just between experts and the public, but within scientific circles and among the local populations who live alongside the animals every day. Interviews with local fishermen reveal frustration over dwindling fish stocks, while others express pride in the hippo's global fame. Conservation biologists and ecologists interviewed on national television warn of the severe and worsening environmental damage. Their long-term projections, based on recent studies, suggest that if left unchecked, the hippo population could double within a decade, further straining the ecosystem. These experts point to polluted waterways, declining native fish stocks, and the displacement of endangered species such as the manatee. Their models predict that without intervention, several native species could face local extinction within 20 years. For these scientists, the evidence is overwhelming. The hippos are an invasive species, and their unchecked growth poses a grave threat to Colombia's biodiversity. Many in this camp advocate for a combination of strategies. While non-lethal methods like contraception are being piloted, interviews with wildlife officials reveal skepticism about their long-term effectiveness. Some officials, speaking anonymously, admit that managed culling, though deeply unpopular, may be the only realistic way to restore ecological balance. Their projections indicate that without decisive action, the hippo population could reach unsustainable levels, overwhelming local resources. On the other side, animal rights groups and a significant portion of the public argue passionately for the hippo's right to live. In interviews, activists emphasize that the animals are here due to human actions and that killing them would be an unjust punishment for a problem created by people. This perspective is echoed in public demonstrations and petitions. Many believe that the hippos, now born and raised in Colombia, have become part of the country's natural heritage. The hippo's charismatic presence has also turned them into a tourist attraction, providing economic benefits to some communities. Surveys of local business owners show increased revenue from hippo-related tourism, further complicating the debate. This camp advocates exclusively for non-lethal solutions such as contraception and the potential, though logistically daunting, relocation of hippos to zoos or sanctuaries abroad. Some even propose returning the animals to Africa, though experts interviewed warn of the immense cost and risk involved. This ongoing dilemma raises a profound question. What is our responsibility when an invasive species becomes both established and beloved? Interviews with ethicists and environmental historians highlight the unprecedented nature of Colombia's challenge. The story of the cocaine hippos is more than a strange historical footnote. It is a living case study in the unpredictable consequences of human interference with nature. As the river environments change, so too does the national conversation. Long-term projections from environmental agencies warn that the decisions made in the coming years will shape the Magdalena River ecosystem for generations. The final decision on the hippo's fate will have lasting implications, not only for the river, but for how Colombia defines its relationship with the natural world. As the hippos continue to thrive in their accidental paradise, the people of Colombia must navigate this complex issue, seeking a solution that protects both their unique natural heritage and the safety of their communities. The debate is far from over, and the world is watching to see which path Colombia will choose. As the debate rages across Colombia, a quieter revolution is unfolding, one hidden within the very DNA of Escobar's hippos. Scientists from leading Colombian universities and international research teams have begun to unravel the genetic story of these unexpected giants. Initial studies reveal that in just a few decades the hippos of the Magdalena River have already begun to diverge from their African ancestors. Researchers sequencing hippo genomes have identified subtle shifts, adaptations that may help these animals thrive in their new environment. For example, certain genes related to freshwater tolerance and disease resistance are showing signs of positive selection. These evolutionary changes, though still in their early stages, suggest that Colombia's hippos are not just surviving, they are evolving. Field biologists have documented unique behaviors as well. Unlike their counterparts in Africa, some Colombian hippos have altered their feeding patterns, exploiting crops and native plants unavailable in their ancestral homeland. These dietary shifts are mirrored in genetic markers linked to digestion and metabolism. Geneticists caution, however, that such rapid adaptation carries risks. The founding population was small, leading to a genetic bottleneck. This can reduce genetic diversity, making the population more vulnerable to disease or environmental changes. Yet so far, the hippos have demonstrated remarkable resilience with healthy birth rates and few signs of inbreeding. Looking ahead, scientists are using advanced modeling to predict how these genetic trends might play out over the coming decades. If the hippos remain in Colombia, future generations could become even more distinct from their African relatives, potentially evolving into a unique subspecies shaped entirely by their South American habitat. This ongoing research not only deepens our understanding of evolution in real time, but also adds a new layer to the ethical and environmental debate. Every genetic breakthrough raises fresh questions. Should these animals, now genetically distinct, be considered a new part of Colombia's biodiversity? Or does their invasive status override any claim to belonging? The story of Escobar's hippos is no longer just about an invasive species. It is about evolution, adaptation, and the unpredictable ways life finds to endure and change. As the genetic story of Colombia's hippos continues to unfold, another dimension of their presence demands attention: the economic impact. These enormous animals, once symbols of a drug lord's excess, now have a tangible influence on the lives and livelihoods of local communities. In the agricultural sector, the hippos are both a blessing and a curse. Farmers near the Magdalena River often find their crops trampled or consumed by these massive creatures. Fields of maize and sugarcane in particular are frequent targets. This destruction leads to significant financial losses, forcing many to invest in stronger fencing or other deterrents. However, these measures are costly and not always effective against such powerful animals. On the flip side, the presence of hippos has spurred a burgeoning tourism industry. Adventurous travelers flock to the region, hoping to catch a glimpse of these unexpected giants. Local guides and boat operators have capitalized on this interest, offering tours that promise close encounters with the hippos. This influx of tourists provides a much-needed boost to the local economy, supporting hotels, restaurants, and other businesses. Yet, the hippos' impact on tourism is a double-edged sword. While they draw visitors, they also pose safety risks. Reports of aggressive encounters with humans have raised concerns, prompting calls for stricter regulations and improved safety measures. Balancing the economic benefits of hippo tourism with the need for public safety remains a challenging task. Local businesses, too, feel the hippo's presence. Fishermen, for instance, often find their nets destroyed or their catches stolen by these opportunistic feeders. The hippo's voracious appetites can deplete fish stocks, affecting the livelihoods of those who rely on fishing. Conversely, some entrepreneurial locals have turned the hippos into a unique selling point, crafting and selling hippo-themed merchandise to tourists. The economic impact of the hippos extends to the realm of conservation and research. Funding for hippo-related projects, including genetic studies and population management, has created jobs and opportunities for local scientists and conservationists. However, these initiatives also require substantial investment, often from international sources, to ensure their sustainability. In summary, the economic impact of Colombia's hippos is multifaceted. While they bring challenges, particularly to agriculture and public safety, they also offer opportunities for tourism and local business growth. As the debate over their future continues, understanding and managing this economic dimension will be crucial in finding a balanced solution that supports both the local economy and the environment. As the economic ripples of Colombia's hippos continue to spread, another layer of complexity emerges, one rooted in law, policy, and international cooperation. The presence of a non-native species as large and impactful as the hippo has triggered legal debates at both national and global levels. Domestically, Colombian authorities have grappled with how to classify and manage the hippos. Officially, they are considered an invasive species, a status that brings with it a host of legal responsibilities. Wildlife protection laws, originally designed for native fauna, have required reinterpretation to address the unique challenges posed by these African giants. Agencies must balance the need for public safety and environmental protection with animal welfare considerations, a legal tightrope with no easy answers. On the international stage, Colombia's hippo dilemma has attracted attention from environmental organizations and neighboring countries alike. Treaties such as the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES, offer frameworks for managing invasive species and preventing their spread. However, the hippo's unique origin and current status have exposed gaps in these agreements, prompting calls for updates and new protocols. Cross-border cooperation has become increasingly important. With hippos now spotted in rivers that flow toward other South American nations, regional governments are working together to monitor populations and share research. Joint task forces have been established, focusing on river management, disease prevention, and the development of humane control measures. Legal battles have also played out in the courts, with lawsuits challenging proposed culls, relocations, and sterilization programs. These cases often pit environmental groups against agricultural interests, conservationists against community leaders, and local authorities against international NGOs. The result is a patchwork of policies and regulations, with no single solution in sight. Ultimately, the story of Colombia's hippos is as much about law and diplomacy as it is about biology and economics. The ongoing search for a legal and cooperative framework underscores the global nature of invasive species challenges and the need for innovative, united responses. While laws and treaties try to keep pace with the hippo's advance, Colombia's landscapes have begun writing their own response. The arrival of these African giants has set off a chain reaction, one that's being carefully documented by ecologists and wildlife experts across the country. In the wetlands and riverbanks where hippos have settled, local fauna and flora are showing remarkable resilience and, in some cases, unexpected vulnerability. Ecological surveys reveal shifts in aquatic plant life as hippos graze and reshape riverbeds with their sheer size and appetite. Native grasses, once dominant, are being replaced in certain areas by species better suited to the hippo's heavy grazing patterns. Fish populations, too, are adapting. In some tributaries, the presence of hippos has altered water flow and increased nutrient levels, leading to localized booms in certain fish species, while others struggle to compete. Case studies from the Magdalena River highlight how freshwater turtles and caimans now share their habitat with these formidable newcomers, prompting changes in nesting and feeding behaviors. Bird life, ever sensitive to changes in the ecosystem, has also been affected. Surveys note shifts in wading bird populations as hippo-altered waterways create new feeding grounds for some species while diminishing them for others. Insects and amphibians at the bottom of the food chain are also impacted, with subtle changes cascading upward through the ecosystem. Yet it's not all disruption. Some native plants and animals have found new niches in the altered landscape, illustrating nature's capacity for adaptation. Ecologists continue to monitor these complex interactions, gathering data that may one day inform management strategies not just for hippos, but for invasive species worldwide. The story of Colombia's hippos is a living experiment, one that unfolds day by day as native flora and fauna find ways to survive, coexist, or sometimes fade away. The lessons learned here may shape how we understand and protect ecosystems in an ever-changing world. As Colombia's ecosystems adapt to the presence of hippos, the question remains, what does the future hold for these formidable newcomers? Experts across wildlife management, ecology, and policy are now looking ahead, combining field data with advanced modeling to forecast the hippo's trajectory. Current projections suggest that, without intervention, the hippo population could continue its exponential growth, spreading further throughout Colombia's waterways. This scenario presents both ecological risks and management challenges. Some experts advocate for bold, science-driven solutions, ranging from targeted sterilization campaigns to the relocation of entire herds to protected reserves. Technology is becoming a critical ally in this ongoing battle. Satellite tracking collars now provide real-time data on hippo movements, helping authorities pinpoint high-risk zones and anticipate conflicts with local communities. Drones and remote cameras are streamlining population surveys, while AI-driven models predict the outcomes of various management strategies before they're implemented. These innovations not only enhance efficiency, but also minimize disturbance to the animals and their habitats. Yet the path forward remains complex. Each potential solution carries trade-offs, from ethical concerns to logistical hurdles and financial constraints. The role of international cooperation is increasingly important as Colombia seeks guidance and support from global conservation organizations and neighboring countries. Ultimately, the future of Colombia's hippos will depend on a delicate balance between ecological preservation, public safety, and the remarkable adaptability of nature itself. As the world watches, Colombia stands at the forefront of a unique conservation challenge, with lessons that may one day resonate far beyond its borders.